shows the skyscrapers with the arrows. Also, take out your 9.7 because Naomi needs to come stamp it. Yeah. Your 9.5 will be stamped. Sorry, 9.7 will be stamped. Also, I believe that yesterday we talked about catalytic converters. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So there were two last air pollution controls that I added yesterday. One is a detail about catalytic converters, which is here. You can imagine that this chemistry depends very much on how much oxygen is in your exhaust. As I'm sure you can imagine, you need redox and oxidation to happen at the same time. So to achieve redox simultaneously in parallel, the oxygen volume is really important for the reduction and oxidation to balance each other out. And so all of this depends on, you can see it underlined, the ratio of fuel to oxygen. When you get a smog check, all they're doing is making sure that the right amount of fuel and the right amount of oxygen are going through your car. Later on, if there's a broken piece, they can work on that. But 99% of smog checks are just about your burn rate and your timing to make sure that you maintain the right balance between fuel and oxygen. Yeah.
So if it wasn't for catalytic converters, we wouldn't need to get our smog checked as often?
I believe that's correct. If your car was made before the invention of catalytic converters, which is a mandate, all cars after a certain date need them, and no cars before them do.
Yeah.
I think that if you're exempt from a CAT, you're exempt from smog check. I think.
That would be awesome.
Is your car smog exempt?
I've never smogged it.
So then it is. What's that? Yeah, right, exactly. There's no way to limit those things otherwise, so you fail anyway. Yeah. All right. And finally, please look up here. There's one last thing that has become a really big thing in environmental science in just the last couple of years. This didn't exist a few years ago, but the coal industry has tried really hard to get rid of the sulfur dioxide. As you know, SOx is basically equal to coal. So to lower SOx before burning, the coal industry has found a number of ways to make clean coal, which remember is actually just cleaner coal. To make coal cleaner, you can gasify it, liquefy it, or quote-unquote wash it. Washing is exactly like it sounds. You pulverize it and get it wet, so the sulfur oxides will dissolve into sulfuric acid, and then you dry the powder and burn that. So washing makes the acid rain before you burn it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you have it in a container where you can neutralize it and dispose of it.
Doesn't some SOx get released in the process of gasifying it?
I'm not an expert on those technologies, to be honest with you. Daniel says, doesn't some SOx get released when you gasify it? I don't really know how gasification works, but I've been told that it's a way to manage the SOx. I'm not really sure what the secret is to removing the SOx. Anybody want to talk more about any of this stuff left over from yesterday? Then we're ready for 9.5, which is indoor air pollution, and this will go really quickly. I think we'll probably finish that today as well. What? What number is what? Which numbers is 9.5? Next, we're getting to assignment 9.5, so we'll go in order. Vocab on 9.5, there was just 3 words. I'm guessing not too much trouble. Going once, twice. Vocab on 9.5 last call. Yeah? All right. So, indoor air quality is a surprisingly dangerous thing. We attribute nearly the same number of deaths to indoor air quality as outdoor air quality. In the United States, outdoor air quality is still a little bit deadlier than indoor. So in the U.S., I'd say maybe 45% indoor, 55% outdoor for air pollution death. But in many parts of the world, indoor air quality is more dangerous than outdoor air quality. In Mongolia, where people often heat with open fires inside of very tightly sealed homes, indoor air quality is extremely dangerous. In many parts of rural India, indoor air quality is one of the leading killers of women, because women will often cook over open fires or very primitive wood-burning stoves that have either little or no chimney. In places where people smoke a lot of cigarettes, indoor air quality can be extremely dangerous. So in those countries with very high cigarette use, you get really dangerous indoor air pollution, especially if it's a cold part of the world, like northern China, northern Russia, where people smoke a lot of cigarettes in closed up houses. But even in the U.S., there are a lot of problems with indoor air quality. How many of you heard about the trailers that FEMA gave to Hurricane Katrina refugees? By the way, it's been a while, right? Did we know what Hurricane Katrina was? 2004. So you were all 5-year-olds, right? Forgive me. I mean to say that you were kids and so maybe not listening to the news that much. So, funny, sad story. For those of you that don't remember because you were very young, there was this hurricane called Katrina. It hit the city called New Orleans in a state called Louisiana. And of course, you heard that the hurricane was devastating. A lot of homes were flooded. The levees broke. And so the city got flooded, and everybody had to evacuate the city. Of course, they didn't have a place to live. So the federal government said, dang, we better build a temporary refugee management capacity. Since a lot of people can't go back to their homes, let's give them a place to live. And so the federal government bought a bunch of trailers, you know, like the things that you tow on a truck and you put on the ground into a little house, rectangular house. And those trailers had to be built in an extreme hurry. FEMA ordered them a few weeks after the hurricane, and then had no place to house people until they got the trailers. So really, FEMA bought trailers from whoever could get them done the fastest. We found out later that those buildings were constructed using a lot of laminated wood. And laminated wood will often be made with a glue that, as it cures, releases volatile organic compounds, including formaldehyde. Basically, the United States gave hurricane refugees a free home, but the downside was the home was full of formaldehyde. And the indoor air quality was supposedly really, really dangerous in at least one model of these modular homes. And so a lot of people refused to accept their government housing, saying, I'd rather be a homeless refugee than live in your government-supplied formaldehyde chamber. Really kind of depressing, but this is one of the examples of a term called sick building syndrome. That's number 34. Sick building syndrome is when people who occupy the same building show the same symptoms. So you assume, well, it can either be a weird coincidence or everybody's getting sick from the building itself. Sick building syndrome. In number 35, I have to recommend something. Number 35 is a key goal. Your book does an awesome job. And here comes a very helpful bit of advice. Write this down. Figure 25.2 is a survey of all the things that can go wrong with your inside air quality. I've got a couple of interesting examples and a few little details about these. So I'm going to talk about some, but your book did fine. In 35, I have A through H. Which is 8 different indoor air pollution problems. A is secondhand smoke, which, remember, is not really that much of a problem in the U.S. It kills about 40,000 people a year in this country, which is pretty serious, but there's a lot of countries that have much